Okay, so this is this image is 10-minute walk from where I am. I thought it was a good place to start if we're thinking about biophilia. Uh, it's a beautiful time in northeastern Pennsylvania, and I want to start talking way out of my wheelhouse, except for the fact that I spend a lot of time working with indigenous communities. So my think thought about biophilia is it is essentially the feature of human culture for maybe 300,000 years. Uh, and the bug is everything that started from the Industrial Revolution about our relationship to nature. And so the fundamental uh, attribute of indigenous relationship to nature is animism. It's the idea that all beings, all animals, plants, rocks, inanimate, animate, have consciousness, are part of the kinship which people live with. And it's this deep relationship, deep taxonomic relationship, crafts-based, medicinal-based relationship with nature, which is the essence of our biophilic nature. I just happen to be very lucky to have Tim Keller, because one of my professors at Yale was a little before he had gotten into the biophilic design, but he was definitely on that track. And so that's a starting point um, for my presentation. And then around 10,000 years ago, a whole new culture was created with the idea of monotheism and the fact that the sacred relationship was only between people and the Almighty God. And that left nature kind of out. And there was also the time of converting uh, natural systems for the first time into agriculture. And then about 400 years ago, the scientific revolution with Bacon and others, and led to industrialization, where nature became fundamentally uh, a commodity to be used for human benefit. So um, this is the time of animism in the United States up to 1600. Uh, we, as uh, the arrivals into this landscape, thought that we were coming into a wilderness. It never was a wilderness. It was fully populated, and uh, it was culturally, locally adapted to whatever the local environment was, with tremendous skills. And this part we know only too well. The gradual uh, removal of the Indians back farther and farther west, and the conversion of their territory into the public domain, and finally down to the reservations, which are maybe 8% of the total landscape of the United States. And inside those reservations, much of that is no longer indigenous territory either. So what came after that, and this is the American experience that you were talking about, Tim, was the rapid exploitation of the forest. Once the Native Americans were not on the land, we instituted public property rights, and this is the Delaware River where our family settled. Uh, this was in about the 1830s or 40s, when most of the timber was cut and sent down the river. This is the experience that got our family interested in forestry. And so this is the national level. Um, very little impact on the forest with the early settlers, uh, all the way through to the 1850, 1860. Still, most of the forest was there. It was the railroads that came in the 1860s, the Continental Railroads, the regional railroads, and then the spur railroads went up into every little valley and holler in the Appalachians, and drove that connection to markets, which brought the rapid deforestation. And so by 1920, 1910, 1% is estimated of the initial old growth forests were in the East Coast. And about 30% of carbon emissions since 1750 came from that epoch of deforestation. Had a tremendous impact. And you know the history. Forest Service was founded, and then the forests came back in the eastern United States, largely through them being poor agricultural lands and some increasing plantations. That's a great restoration story. Then the next real phase in the carbon story comes with the invention of steel and the invention of Portland cement, both of which required tremendous fossil fuel energy to get up to the temperatures to get the iron ore into steel and get the limestone into cement. And so this began the the whole era of large scale emissions. And this slide is dealing with buildings, which are about 42% of all global carbon emissions coming out of the building sector, 30% from the heating and cooling and electric usage. And that's the part we've concentrated on largely in green building up till now. And then 12% are coming from embodied carbon. And if you look at that graph on the left with the red arrow down, the black line is showing the gigatons of carbon coming out of building materials. And in between 1995 and 2015, in 20 years, it more than doubled. And so that is the race we're dealing with about looking at doubling the whole building footprint in the next 40 years. We can't be doing it with these kinds of materials. And this shows the IPCC pathways to staying below 2 degrees centigrade. And the important part of this graph is that no matter how much we reduce the fossil fuel emissions now, and we probably can't meet most of these pathways, in order to keep the planet at 2 degrees, we have to go into massive carbon capture and storage. And there's lots of wonderful startups now that are gaining venture capital that are looking at how you capture and store carbon, but they're long ways away from becoming profitable and becoming scalable businesses. So in the short term, we're going to have to, if we're going to capture and store a lot of carbon, it is going to have to come from natural climate solutions. It's going to have to come from agriculture and forestry, capturing, storing carbon in the soil and in the biomass. And so that is the most important thing I think about forestry is we got to capture and store carbon and not wait around for geoengineering. So if we look at that kind of a pathway, we look at managing forests for both carbon storage, forests and farms for both carbon storage and for building materials. And for getting, this is the part that isn't being done yet, and certifying that carbon captured and stored in the landscape, getting carbon certification at the origin of the supply chain, and then providing biogenic materials and natural materials, plus a significant certified carbon credit to the building, and substituting those biogenic natural materials for the high emission materials. And this, you probably know about this. Nordic Structures is one of the pioneers in cross-laminated timber, black spruce plantations in northern Quebec. And this is the U.S. design building where it's mass timber and significant amount of biophilic design. It's a wonderful building if you haven't seen it. And so this is the choice that architects and designers and engineers have to make right now. We know about the high emissions industrial materials. There are a lot of the things we did to drop the building emissions by getting tight buildings with really high quality insulation turned out to be very, very high carbon. But this is, by the way, carbon emitted per ton of material. So steel being very high, gypsum high, cement is lower because we're using a lot of it, but per ton it's not as high emitting. And then you get to the nature-based materials, hempcrete, bamboo, mass timber, dimensional lumber, and straw. And this is where the big opportunity is in terms of reducing embodied carbon, is substituting these climate-friendly materials for the more carbon-intensive materials, and doing it in a way that doesn't impoverish the forest. So we've taken this whole idea to Ecuador of how do we avoid deforestation, which is the big problem in Ecuador. Is we're basically in Ecuador, where the U.S. was in, in 1860. And the same kind of drivers. Here's where we're operating, and this is the northwest uh, coastal rainforest. If you go up into this area, you're in Colombia. So Peru down here, Ecuador, and this is a 30-year period of time with rapid deforestation going on in the coastal rainforest. And that yellow area is where a 50,000 hectare area where we're operating with bird conservation and a number of partners, including the Ecuadorian Ministry for Environment and their Red Plus action plan. Major driver, you just substitute logging roads for railroads, and you have the exact same phenomenon. You put the road in, all of a sudden all the markets are there, the global markets, the regional markets for agriculture, for timber. With some of the wood that comes out of the forest where we are ends up in Home Depot. It's total deforestation driven. Don't buy the wood at Home Depot that is called, now I'm forgetting his name. I'll come back. Anyway, illegal logging comes after the road comes in, conversion to cattle pasture, conversion to, in this case, African oil palm. It can be cacao. Earlier it was coffee. So in 2008, we worked with some community members through a whole bunch of participatory planning, and we created a community-based forest products company. We had no idea what we were doing. If we'd known what we were doing, we probably would have given up to begin with. But anyway, it's often good to be ignorant when you start something really hard. The upper right is the community shareholders, and we now have 100 employees that are making about $8,000 a year, which is at least 3 times what they were making before in their living. So the basic model we're operating on is we are operating in a market at the bottom of the supply chain and a market at the top of the supply chain. At the bottom of the supply chain, the only way we can help communities that are right in the frontier of deforestation not cut down their forest and go to agriculture is to make the forest more valuable to them than converting it to agriculture. And I tell you, that's hard when you got African oil palm because that's very profitable. But the way we do that is we manage the forest for biodiversity, for carbon, and for community impact. And we provide jobs in manufacturing, forestry and manufacturing. And we bring community members into 15 to 20-year lease contracts where we pay them an annual lease payment. So the benefits they get from working with our company are they get a lease contract, they get a salary, and they can continue doing small crops in a part of their land that was already cleared. And with that, we get to forest governance, which is the real problem in the tropics, is how do you create a governance structure which provides enough benefit to keep the forest there? They get double the value that they would get, more than double the value they get that if it converted to agriculture. We do very low impact forestry. We don't build roads. We build cable systems that are small diameter up into the forest. We take portable sawmill in the forest. We transport the cants out of the forest. And we only take 2 to 5 trees per acre per 20 years. Very minimal impact and about 40%. So we're basically a conservation company doing minimal forestry to keep the forest there. That's the basic idea. Tremendous biodiversity. Coastal spider monkey is one of the 22 most endangered primates in the world, and we have some of its best remaining habitat we're managing with doing sustainable forestry. Jaguars, great green macaw, 22 species of amphibians that are severely threatened or endangered. So the biggest problem we faced, and we had no idea we were going to have to face this, is what's the biggest problem of managing tropical forests? It's the fact that they're so damn diverse. We have permanent parcel studies that we've been doing for years, and we've identified just in about 15 hectares in our permanent parcels over 300 species of trees. And I'm sure that there's another 100 species that we have not gotten to because we're sampling such a small part of the landscape. And of those 300 species, only 6 have good markets. I mean, just walk away. That forest is not manageable. You cannot manage a forest that only has that small percentage of the biomass in the forest. So, and that's why people are converting their forest to agriculture, because the forest has a very limited value to them economically. So our fundamental design innovation is we only manufacture and sell multiple species products. You cannot buy a single species from us, no matter how much you like it. We will not sell it to you because it's bad forestry and it's bad for the communities. So every product has about 7 to 15 species in it. We're using 60 species out of the 300. The appearance is rich, warm color mixes with a lot of texture, different kind of textures, different parts of different trees. And it has a biophilic impact because you're getting this sense of being connected to the diversity of the forest. And when you go into one of the buildings that has our materials, you really do sense that. So we manage chain of custody from the forest to the community manufacturing facility all the way to the final client. And we do that for a number of reasons, one of which is we're ending up delivering them a carbon impact, a certified carbon impact, and we can only do that if we hold both ends of the supply chain. We're getting certified in FSC and carbon this year. Next year, we'll be doing LCAs, life cycle analysis, and environmental product declarations. Our draft cradle to gate LCA shows that the carbon storage in our forest, the avoided deforestation, and the ongoing carbon storage is way greater than the processing and transport emissions from manufacturing in Ecuador and sending it to the United States. Small is, local is good social impact. It's not necessarily good climate impact in our case anyway. So why can we have this low LCA? Because we're capturing and storing so much carbon by conserving and restoring the forests. The rest is just, I'm going to show you some of the kinds of products we're doing and what they look like. They're flooring, ceiling paneling, subway tile, brick kind of appearance in restaurants, custom stairs with multiple species. All of them have this rich, warm, inviting biophilic sense. They make you just feel good when you're close to them. This is a 4,000 square foot office building in Providence, Rhode Island. House in Quito, wall tile paneling. This one is a bear to manufacture, but people love it. Penny tile, multiple species, makes a great kitchen backsplash. And there's some ceiling tile. So that's pretty much what we're doing. I look forward to the discussion. We're applying something that is really comes out of the American experience. We've taken the whole idea, what happened in the United States in after the Forest Service was established was a 50-year intensive R&D that went through from silvics to wood properties to product development to market supply chains to timber harvest mechanism, et cetera, all with the goal of connecting well-managed forests to markets in order to create a vibrant forest products economy in rural areas in the United States. And now, as you know, in many areas in the United States, forest products is way bigger than agriculture. Even in Wisconsin, the dairy state, the forest products industry is bigger. We're taking that model down to the tropics and saying, if you want to save the forest, don't just draw a circle around it and say nobody can come in. Create a vibrant forest products economy that keeps the forest there. So that's it. That's my presentation for now.